So previously, up to this point, we've been reading about Devahuti and Kardama Muni and the appearance of their son Kapila. But this week we read more about Kardama Muni actually leaving home, his discussions with Kapila Muni before he left, and then the very introduction of Devahuti's inquiries from Kapila Dev. So there's a transition in the narration here from what we were reading previously all the way back with Vidura and Maitreya, and the description and narration of the creation of the universe, the creation of the entire cosmos, and then Lord Brahma's desire to populate it, creating Manu. Manu's descendants are being described in this section, and that's pretty much where we're headed here. But almost from this point on, for our particular reading in this segment, from now until the end in next summer, for the next several months, we'll be reading about Lord Kapila Dev and his instructions and activities. So let us begin there. I'll switch over to the texts. This is December 2022, lessons 3 and 4, beginning with third canto, chapter 24, text 41. Sri Maitreya speaking to Vidura. Thus, when Kardama Muni, the progenitor of human society, was spoken to in fullness by his son Kapila, he circumambulated him, and with a good pacified mind, he at once left for the forest. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Forest going means to take 100% shelter of the Supreme Lord, as explained by Prahlad Maharaj in his talks with his father. Sada samud vigya dhyam, Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.5. People who have accepted a temporary material body are always full of anxieties. One should therefore not be very much affected by this material body, but should try to be freed. The preliminary process to become freed is to go to the forest or give up family relationships and exclusively engage in Krishna consciousness. That is the purpose of going to the forest. Otherwise, the forest is only a place of monkey and wild animals. To go to the forest does not mean to become a monkey or a ferocious animal. It means to accept exclusively the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage oneself in full service. There were some very good forum posts. Faye wrote a really nice one explaining this concept. Actually, several different people wrote about it. Forest going doesn't necessarily mean just going out into a place where there's woods and trees. It actually means, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, taking 100% shelter of the Supreme Lord. Now, many of us might think that in our household life, we're also doing that. But then sometimes there are events and circumstances which manifest and take place, which reveal to us actually how attached we really are to this abode and our family members and our comforts. So part of the human form of life includes an austerity of going through different situations which help us become aware of those things and also to give them up. Prabhupada sometimes talked about how people think that their relatives are like their soldiers who can help them, save them from birth, death, disease, and old age, but none of us can really help each other completely in that regard. So the idea is to focus our attention and surrender directly to the Supreme Lord rather than anything else. So, Samapriya, you want to take over and go to the next person?
Yeah, but before we go to the next, so everybody doesn't start to sweat, if they're not in the proper order of life, to become more and more renounced. Some of us have family responsibilities. This is not to say that you should not do your duty. The perfection of grihastha life is to do your duty without being attached materially. You know, it's not doing your, it's not that we should leave to go to the forest and we should renounce our family when they're just at the improper time. But it's a real practice to consciously engage perfectly in fulfilling your duty, but at the same time practice this kind of renunciation. So that's the art. Just thought I'd clarify that. It's very encouraging, actually, to use our situation in life to become detached and attached to Krishna. Okay, let's go on now with Manvantara. Would you like to read?
Unmute.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 42. The sage Kardama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of him exclusively. Without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. Purport. Muna means silence. Unless one becomes silent, he cannot think completely about the pastimes and activities of the Lord. It is not that because one is a fool and cannot speak nicely, he therefore takes the vow of Muna. Rather, one becomes silent so that people will not disturb him.
The proper pronunciation is Mauna. Mauna. That AU.
Mona. Thank you. Mona. One is called a Muni when he remains grave and does not talk nonsense. Maharaj Ambarish set a very good example. Whenever he spoke about the pastimes of the Lord. Mona necessitates refraining from nonsensical talking and engaging the talking facility in the pastimes of the Lord. In that way, one can chant and hear about the Lord in order to perfect his life. Here comes another word. Vritam.
Vratam.
Thank you. Vritam means that one should take a vow, as explained in Bhagavad Gita.
Amanitvam
Amanitvam Adamvitvam.
Amanditam Adamditam. Without hankering for personal respect and without being proud of one's material possession. Amisha means not being violent. There are 18 processes for attaining knowledge and perfection, and by his vow, Kardama Muni adopted all the principles of self-realization. Thank you for the enunciations.
Okay, so Manvantaraji, could you bring back the text, Pati? Okay, so this actually is a really wonderful purport that talks about real renunciation. So what does that mean, not to talk nonsense and to be grave?
Right. So it sounds exactly like what Maharaj Yudhisthira did when the Pandavas were leaving home. It's not that he didn't speak, but he didn't speak about any politics or state affairs or anything like that. He just, it was all related to salvation and going back to Godhead.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's silence.
Good. So we can do that in any stage of life. Of course, it's recommended to take up some kind of physical renunciation because it will be easier. It's easier that way. But this is a perfect description of real renunciation. Okay. Thank you, Manvantara.
One point, Sama, is that we see that Kardama Muni was already a liberated soul. We read that throughout the history of he and Devahuti's relationship, how he engaged in all these different things. But because he had already seen the Lord, he had established his eternal relationship with him. He still, he didn't require any of these things. But the idea is that our relationship with the eternal and with the Supreme Lord is ever and ever enhanced. It's always growing. It will never diminish. So the process of going deeper and deeper and deeper and undergoing more and more practices to propel us along that path are encouraged. It's not that we kind of plateau off. He had reached perfection, and still he wanted to go deeper into his realization of his relationship and exchange with the Lord.
Wonderful. That's an important fact. Thank you. Okay, Madhurya Leela, would you like to read? Madhurya? She said she was going to participate. Madhurya Ji, are you there?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, welcome back, my darling. Welcome back from India.
Yes, welcome back, Madhurya
Good to be
Leela.
back.
Haribol.
She was
Okay.
on
Good to be
a
back.
wonderful pilgrimage. Hare Krishna. Okay, read, my darling.
Okay, so Bhagavatam 3:24-43. He fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality Godhead, Para Brahman, who is beyond cause and effect, who manifests the three modes of material nature, who is beyond those three modes, and who is perceived only through unfailing devotional service. Prabhupada's purport. Whenever there is bhakti, there must be three things present: the devotee, the devotion, and the Lord. The devotee, the devotion, and the Lord. Without these three things, bhakta, bhakti, and bhagavan, there is no meaning to the word bhakti. Kardama Muni fixed his mind on the Supreme Brahman and realized him through bhakti, or devotional service. This indicates that he fixed his mind on the personal feature of the Lord, because bhakti cannot be executed unless one has realization of the personal feature of the Absolute Truth. Gunavabhasi, he is beyond the three modes of material nature, but it is due to him that the three modes of material nature are manifested. In other words, although the material energy is an emanation of the Supreme Lord, he is not affected as we are by the modes of material nature. We are conditioned souls, but he is not affected, although the material nature has emanated from him. He is the supreme living entity and is never affected by Maya, but we are subordinate, minute living entities prone to be affected by the limitations of Maya. If he is in constant contact with the Supreme Lord by devotional service, the conditioned living entity also becomes freed from the infection of Maya. So that's the important point right there. That last sentence.
Good. And there is a big difference. That is the important point. That's what we're all trying to achieve. The other thing which Prabhupada always stresses is the difference between the conditioned soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here you're stressing that again. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, the Lord is never affected, although the modes emanated from him, but he's not affected by them. But we're minute. So unless we performing devotional service, we try to rise above the modes, and that'll help us.
That's how we rise above the modes, right? By performing devotional service, we can come on that level. Krishna doesn't associate with anything material. So in order to associate with him, we have to engage in some eternal activities and not material activities. Good, thank you. Sham, would you like to read? Next slide. Sham Govinda, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brother Samapriya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
There you go.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 44. Thus, he gradually became unaffected by the false ego of material identity and became free from material affection, undisturbed, equal to everyone, and without duality. He could indeed see himself also. His mind was turned inward and was perfectly calm, like an ocean unagitated by waves. Purport. The ocean is filled by many thousands of rivers, and millions of tons of its water evaporates into clouds. Yet the ocean is the same unagitated ocean. The laws of nature may work, but if one is fixed in devotional service at the lotus feet of the Lord, he is not agitated, for he is introspective. He does not look outside to material nature, but he looks into the spiritual nature of his existence with a sober mind. He simply engages in the service of the Lord. Thus he realizes his own self without false identification with matter and without affection for material possessions. Such a great devotee is never in trouble with others because he sees everyone from the platform of spiritual understanding. He sees himself and others in the right perspective.
Oh, that is beautiful. You have to tell me something about how that affects you in your life. I mean, we have so many distractions, and even though we have to take care of our duties in life, this should be very encouraging. This is very encouraging to be introspective and to take shelter of the introspective nature. Can you see that,
Yeah.
Betsy? You want to put it back on so that he can see the words?
One thing comes to my mind, which links with the following purport that Mother Madhura Leela read. So there has to be the Bhakta and Bhagavan, and then there's Bhakti. So in the material world, we're looking for love within the material world. That's the highest pleasure. So we're looking outward. But in this verse, we apply love. So we apply the same thing, the highest thing in the material world, but we apply it inward to the Bhagavan within. And we can become self-realized and attain the highest pleasure. So that's what I was.
Can you do that?
With your association, Mother
Hare
Samapriya.
Krishna. No, we all need to take shelter.
We were
Aditi, do you
talking,
want to say something?
yes, we were talking this morning. Karma Muni was practiced from his 10,000 years of sitting in the forest, doing his Astanga Yoga. And therefore, because he had that practice and had accomplished it in a very mature way, then he was able to walk about the world in that state. So when we chant our japa, that's our time in the Gaudiya Vaishnava practice. Vaishnava practice is practically all Vaishnavas chant japa, taking time to spend with the Lord personally. It's not kirtan, it's not a lot of devotees, there's not a lot of distractions and other things going on. So that's why we try to find main themes within the Srimad Bhagavatam that we present in the forums. And the idea is that while first we read the texts or associate here during the Zooms, and then when we chant our japa, japa doesn't just mean hearing, it means also meditating on the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. And in this way, sambandha, abhideha, and prayojana, establishing our relationship, acting in that relationship, and maturing to love in that relationship take place. So I just wanted to share that japa is a really important, good nourishment for internal association with the Lord.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
Very wonderful. It should be, actually, that's the most important time of the day, directly associated with Krishna. It's beautiful. And we all should hanker for that, in our practice. Thank you, Shyam. Okay, Tisha, would you like to read? My darling Tisha.
Hi, Krishna. Yes, I'm just
Hi.
recovering from laryngitis, so but I want to read. So.
Okay.
Okay.
The best you can.
I'm good. 324 to 45, maybe 25. He thus became liberated from conditioned life and became self-situated in transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, the omniscient supersoul within everyone. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word parena is very significant. Para means transcendental, untinged by material contamination. Full consciousness that one is an eternal servant of the Lord is called para bhakti. If one has an identification with material things and executes devotional service for attainment of some material gain, that is vida bhakti, contaminated bhakti. One can actually become liberated by execution of para bhakti. Another word mentioned here is sarvanya. The super soul sitting within the heart is all cognizant. He knows. I may forget my past activities due to the change of body, but because the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is sitting within me, he knows everything. Therefore, the result of my past karma or past activities is awarded to me. I may forget, but he awards me suffering or enjoyment for the misdeeds or good deeds of my past life. One should not think that he is freed from reaction because he has forgotten the actions of his past life. Reactions will take place, and what kind of reactions there will be is judged by the supersoul, the witness.
Unmute, Sama.
So I may forget, Tisha. What do you think about that? I may forget and think it's unfair that I'm suffering the result of what? I've been good all this lifetime, or I'm trying to be good, or I'm trying to follow religious practices and principles, but still I'm suffering. Why is that? So we see why. What do you think about that? Krishna sees the whole story.
I think that it's helped me in my life because I've had some pretty tragic things happen at a very young age. And then when you come across the teaching, about karma and especially about the Paramatma within your heart, it gives like a understanding and an awareness that whatever actions I'm doing right now are going to affect my future. So I can't change the past, but I can work towards a better future, I guess, for me.
Very good. That's a very good vegan, very good understanding. Good for you. Yeah, we all suffer like anything due to our past karma. And this karma extends lifetimes. Really, lifetimes. And it might not make sense now, but due to intricate relationships and situations, then we have to suffer. But when we come in contact with devotees, all of that suffering is fuel to become Krishna conscious. So there's a positive also aspect to this. Thank you so much.
Before we go on, Tisha, can you explain your realizations about this in the first paragraph? Para means transcendental. So there's para bhakti, which is pure transcendental bhakti. But then it also says here that if one has any identification with material things and executes devotional service for attainment of some material gain, that is vida bhakti, contaminated bhakti. So what is the difference between contaminated bhakti and para bhakti?
I'm going to say your attachment to the result of your actions. Because
that could be one.
If I'm doing things for my own benefit, then I'm not doing things for Krishna. And so I'm trying to perform all my services and duty to serve Krishna, not myself.
What would be an example of doing something for yourself in the name of bhakti?
Well, I guess I'm doing a lot of things for myself right now, trying to get better. So I still am trying to get better for, so that I can do good and do service.
Good.
So I'm doing
Perfect.
In the beginning, what happens is that we are here in this material world because we want to exert our will. We want to be independent and do what we want to do. When one finally becomes frustrated with that and takes to the practice of bhakti, then it's natural that pre-coming in contact with bhakti mentality will still be prevalent. It's our natural conditioned state. We're educated from the time we're born, practically speaking, to engage in fruitive activity in this world, especially in the Western world. So when we take to bhakti, it's not immediate that all of a sudden we can transfer our motives. Basically, I was looking for that. It matters what one's motive is. And that doesn't just mean the conscious motive, it also means the deep-hearted motive, why I'm doing something. If Srila Prabhupada gave the example, in this material world, practically the most pure love that we find, selfless love, is a mother for her child. The mother, you can see the parents, they'll practically do anything. They go through so much trial and tribulation and difficulties in life to accommodate and help their children. So what we're doing in this practice is following the orders of the spiritual master, engaged in activities that will transfer that same motive and impulse from the soul that's filtered through material nature and directing it directly to Krishna through the spiritual master. So it's actually the difference between Parabhakti and Vida Bhakti is the motive. The motive has to be out of love for Krishna. The more we love Krishna, the more we'll think of him and try to act in such a way that he's pleased.
I have a question about that, Patti.
Mm-hmm.
If, we know the example of watering the root of the tree and then all the leaves get the benefit. Now, hearing this philosophy, one might think, correctly so, if I serve Krishna, then I will get the benefit because I'm like one of the leaves, So that might not be a pure motivation, but it's a very intelligent one to understand that actually I'll really become happy. Is there a point at which then actually you start to engage and fall in love with Krishna and actually want to please him? If you just come with that attitude, if I serve Krishna, I'll be happy. Actually, because Prabhupada uses these kinds of examples all the time.
Kind of like a seesaw, or one of those scales where there's two sides to it, like in law. You see that lady with the two sides to the scales. Where the weight is where our love is. So if it's got some on the side for Krishna and some on the side for ourselves, it's not parabhakti. It's not pure devotional service. When we study the love of the residents of Vrindavan, they're the prime example in all the three worlds and beyond, anywhere, of people that totally love Krishna and will do anything for Krishna and do everything to try and please the Lord. Your example, or this example with the mother and the child, many parents bring up their children with a not hidden, but a sub-motive that in their future, their children will help them. So that's also has some selfish entity to it.
True. Okay, it's a process.
Yeah.
This is a process.
Yes.
Right. So that's the good thing. There's so many things to be aware of. But we can be assured that what we're really looking for, that divine loving relationship, it is there with Krishna. Thank you. Let's go on now with Premananda. Premananda, are you there? Would you like
yes,
to
I'm
read?
here. Yes,
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Why don't you read this and the next slide? Because they're
Okay,
both.
thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:24-46. He began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart, and that everyone is existing on him because he is the super soul of everyone. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. That everyone is existing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not mean that everyone is also Godhead. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is resting on him, the Supreme Lord, but that does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also everywhere. Text 47. Yes.
Before we go on, do you want to comment on that? What does it mean that last statement that the Supreme Lord is not everywhere? What does that mean?
Well, I had a question on that, and then Prabhu clarified my doubt. So even I had a question that we have studied that Krishna is all pervading, right? And then when I read this statement that Krishna is not everywhere, so it kind of confused me. So the explanation is that that the Supreme Lord, even though his energy is spread everywhere, he still remains in his personal form, in his own abode, right? The example given of the sunshine is spread all over the universe, but still the sun is resting in one place. That's one example. And another example is that of a king. And the king has a government, but his energy is manifesting everywhere. He has various departments. There are departmental heads, and even though his energy is spread everywhere, that does not mean that the king is expected to be present in every department personally. He is wherever he is, but everything is working as part of his energy. So it's the same thing here. The Lord's energy is spread everywhere. Everything is working under his direction, but he is not there in his personal form everywhere. He is there in his own abode. So that's the explanation that Prabhu gave me.
Yeah, wonderful. And his representatives are there, just like
Yes.
the minister is the representative of the king. Thank you. That's good. Thank you. Go on with the next one now, Premananda.
Okay, text 47. Freed from all hatred and desire, Kardama Muni, being equal to everyone because of discharging uncontaminated devotional service, ultimately attained the path back to Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, only by devotional service can one understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. And after understanding him perfectly in his transcendental position, entering into the kingdom of God. The process of entering into the kingdom of God is Tri Pada Bhuti Gati, or the path back home, back to Godhead, by which one can attain the ultimate goal of life. Kardama Muni, by his perfect devotional knowledge and service, achieved this ultimate goal, which is known as Bhagavati Gati. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the third canto, 24th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Renunciation of Kardama Muni.
Okay, before we change, that just that mere statement, the ultimate goal, doesn't that, everyone think about that for a moment. We are being presented here with the ultimate goal of human life. Does that inspire you to take this up fully, Premananda?
Well, absolutely. We have spent so many lifetimes without knowing what our true goal is. And thanks to Srila Prabhupada, he really showed us what our true goal is, where our real eternal home is, who our Supreme Lord and Master is. So I think we should just stay fixed on that goal and work towards that process.
Wonderful.
The process of devotional service. Yeah.
Very good. Sometimes we find that our own false ego takes us away. And that's a dangerous position. You know, we think we're doing this, but you know, I really have to take care of this other business. There's no other business. I mean, really, there's no other business. Even in whatever you do, being a parent or whatever you're doing, you must do it to satisfy Krishna. That's why a husband and wife stay together, to satisfy Krishna. That's their service, to do it for Krishna. Always Krishna's in the center. So that's good.
Right.
That's why we're achieving the ultimate goal when we keep Krishna in the center of activities.
Absolutely.
Right?
And yes, and sometimes what happens is, sometimes because we are conditioned human beings, we sometimes tend to lose our patience. We said, oh, this is too far off. I mean, I'm not going to make it, But I think we just have faith in the process, faith in Guru and Sadhu and devotees, and then Krishna will take us back to God at the right time, provided we stick to the process and follow the whole 9 processes of devotional service. So faith is a very important component in this, if we ever lose our way or lose our patience.
Good. Good. And actually, a devotee is always in the mood of thinking that only with Krishna's mercy will he be successful.
Right.
Even a pure devotee, Prabhupada always has expressed that giving credit to his spiritual master and Krishna. He's always, we have to aspire for Krishna's mercy. Thank you, Premananda.
Thank you.
Just one point before we go on. At this point, at the end of that chapter, the renunciation of Kardama Muni, the story of Kardama, Devahuti, Manu, Brahma, all that kind of dissipates now into the storyline, and there's a transition directly to the pastimes and instructions and activities of Lord Kapila-Dev. Just wanted to note that in our storyline, how Srimad Bhagavatam is progressing. At this point, now chapter 25 will begin, and it completely kind of changes direction. It truly is a new chapter, like a new volume in our progress.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. And with that, Chaitamayi, why don't you begin this for us?
Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mata. Chapter 25, the glories of devotional service. 325, 1 and 2. Sri Shonaka said, although he is unborn, the Supreme Personality of Godhead took birth as Kapila Muni by his internal potency. He descended to disseminate transcendental knowledge for the benefit of the whole human race. There is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature a yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. Purport. The word Atma Prajna Pyate indicates that the Lord descends for the benefit of the human race to give transcendental knowledge. Therefore, since a disciplic succession is required, this knowledge is expounded either by the Supreme Personality of God himself or by his bona fide devotee.
Okay. Go on, Chaita.
Shonaka Muni also states here that Kapila, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took birth or appeared simply to appreciate and disseminate transcendental knowledge. Simply to understand that one is not matter, but spirit soul, aham brahmasmi, I am by nature Brahman, is not sufficient knowledge for understanding the self and his activities. One must be situated in the activities of Brahman. Knowledge of those activities is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. To hear from the Lord is the real pleasure of the senses. Therefore, he is known as Govinda, for by his words, by his teachings, by his instruction, by everything connected with him, he enlivens the senses. Whatever he instructs is from the transcendental platform, and his instructions, being absolute, are non-different from him. Hearing from Krishna or his expansion or plenary expansion like Kapila is very pleasing to the senses. Bhagavad Gita can be read or heard many times, but because it gives great pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad Gita, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it. And each time he gets new enlightenment. That is the nature of the transcendental message. Similarly, we find that transcendental happiness in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The more we hear and chant the glories of the Lord, the more we become happy. Haribol.
Haribol. So what is that about hearing and reading over and over again? Sometimes you get tired of hearing the same thing over and over again. Why is this being recommended?
Yeah, this is the magical nature of reading this literature. And Prabhupada once used the example of someone reading a newspaper, and you spend a lot of time reading and concentrating on it. You want to really absorb it. And then what do you do with it? You throw it into the trash, because the next day you're going to have to go back and catch up on some new information. And the whole process is just, how do you say, it's just corrosive. But here we're reading these amazing messages, and they get better and better with time. I was just meditating on the fact that so many things that I read when I was young, I'd forgotten about them and they don't mean much. But I've been reading this Bhagavad Gita for about 30 years now. And each time I read it, I never say, oh yeah, I know that one. No, it's always giving me some new insight. And as our life experience increases, so does the value of these amazing teachings.
Good.
And I was delighted to hear that reading, hearing, and chanting, these are the, how do you say, the exaltation of our sense life. This is the best we can do with our senses in terms of giving us pleasure. Right. Is hearing these messages. It's, I mean, what a comfort is that? We can stop looking elsewhere. This is where we're going to find our bliss.
And we're going to find ourselves. We were discussing this morning. I asked my husband, don't you think it's odd that we don't know who we are? Think about it. We're functioning, doing all kinds of stuff, and we don't know who we are. What kind of? That's kind of like that's ridiculous to ever be in this situation. I mean, you are the closest thing to you, and you don't know who you are. That doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
So
we pride ourselves on being intelligent, but then you're right.
Who is it that's intelligent, right?
Yeah, we don't even have the basics together.
Good. All right. Well, we're getting them. We're getting them.
Yes.
And this all comes from when Shyam Govinda was reading internal. Right. We have to spend time with ourselves, with this philosophy, with Krishna. It's okay. And it's not, I'm not doing something for Krishna. This is the stuff to do for Krishna. Calm down, go in, chant the holy name. It's a simple process. Thank you, Chaitaji.
Haribol.
Ekaratha. Let's hear from Ekaratha.
Before we go on, just want to point out that along those same lines you were just saying, Prabhupada's explaining here that simply to understand that one is not matter, but spirit soul, aham brahmasmi, I am by nature Brahman, is not sufficient knowledge. For understanding the self and his activities, one must be situated in the activities of Brahman. Knowledge of those activities is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So it is the beginning. It is the beginning that one has to understand, I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul. And in the beginning, what that spirit soul is, who that spiritual personality eternally is unclear because we identify so much with this temporary body. So the whole process is, again, just like we were transferring our love or the motive for our activities from our own selfish motive to those of the Lord. Simultaneously, by doing those things, we become more and more clear in our consciousness. What's that verse from Shikshastika about cleansing your consciousness? Cheto darpana marjanam, right? That by chanting by contacting the Lord, we actually become that dust becomes clear, and then we can actually understand who we are eternally and what activities will naturally perform eternally, not just temporarily according to a false ego and a body.
God, what a relief! Actually, I'm very relieved to know that this body is not me. I'm really happy about that. So, okay, let's go on with Eka Radhika. Would you like to read Eka Radhika?
Yes, Mataji, thank you.
Okay, sweetie.
Srimad Bhagavatam 325.4. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the most powerful sage Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. Being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. Here, Maitreya is considered a powerful sage, and therefore he is also described as Bhagavan. This word can be used not only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for anyone who is almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Maitreya is addressed as Bhagavan because he was spiritually far advanced. He was a personal friend of Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, a literary incarnation of the Lord. Maitreya was very pleased with the inquiries of Vidura because they were the inquiries of a bona fide advanced devotee. Thus Maitreya was encouraged to answer. When there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality, the questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging.
Oh, that's beautiful. What do you think about that last thing, this association of devotees, when there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality? The questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging, and also very sweet. Do you experience that sometimes?
Yes, all the time. Like I don't have friends that are not devotees, and that's the reason why you kind of, you give association, but you don't receive association, and it's because I'm finding the pleasure in the conversations about Krishna, and not about the weather or politics or gossip, for example. And so and I think that when the devotees are talking about Krishna and they are developing a taste for that, then they find joy there, and that is why it's so sweet. And when it's pure devotees like them, then we can also read those conversations, and not only they enjoy the conversations, but then we get to benefit from them. So that's wonderful. So it's eternal. It's eternal for everybody to come that wants to listen to these conversations. They can benefit.
Sure, especially these conversations between Maitreya and Vidura. This is a really big one. Thank you, Eka Radhika. Okay, Ian, would you like to read next? My dear friend Ian.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
325, 5 to 6.
6. Okay. So Maitreya said, when Kardama left for the forest, Lord Kapila stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovar to please his mother, Devahuti. And Kapila, who could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her. Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila as follows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The absence of the father, it is the duty of the grown son to take charge of his mother and serve her to the best of his ability so that she will not feel separation from her husband. And it is the duty of the husband to leave home as soon as there is a grown-up son to take charge of his wife and family affairs. That is the Vedic system of household life. One should not remain continually implicated in household affairs up to the time of death. He must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken charge of by a grown son.
Huh. That's another interesting point. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Okay, well, yeah.
Well, no,
Also-
how do we do such a thing in this age?
Okay, well, one has to do with some amount of intelligence. When I came on, it said one should not just leave one's home because yes, you're at a certain age, so you need to leave as per Vedic system. But there has to be some intelligent arrangement. What if the wife doesn't have a grown-up son? Then you have to make some other arrangements so that the wife, is not left unattended. So one has to do with some amount of intelligence.
Thank you, Ian. I think Chaita, did you have something to say about this?
It's actually about the previous purport, and I was wondering if there was any more information about the friendship between Maitreya and Vedavyas.
Oh, Patsy?
Yes, we read previously. Let's see, how does it go? It was more that Maitreya's guru, who was that? Was a friend of Vyasadeva. I remember in the beginning of the third canto when we came across, when Vidura finally arrived to Maitreya, I'd actually have to look it up. So much information, but it was when Uddhava, what happened was that when Vidura was traveling on pilgrimage, he met with Uddhava after Uddhava had left Dwarka, after the disappearance of Krishna. And Vidura was very anxious to learn transcendental wisdom from Uddhava. But because Uddhava was younger, he felt it, and he was also instructed by the Lord to go to Badrik Ashram with a specific message. So he deferred and explained that the Lord, because Maitreya had come to where Vidura, to where Uddhava and the Lord were just before the Lord departed. And the Lord left instructions for Vidura with Maitreya. So Uddhava explained to Vidura that I've been told by the Lord to go to Badrik Ashram, but you should go and meet with Maitreya and hear from him. He's more elderly and has specific information from you. In that section, it was describing how Maitreya is friends with, his guru is friends with Vyasadeva.
Who was his guru?
I can't remember.
Parasara Muni?
I'll look it up.
Somebody, yeah.
Look it up.
Can't do that, right?
Okay, great.
Before we go on, there was one point, Ian, in this particular verse, it says that Devahuti remembered the words of Brahma. Sitting, Devahuti remembered the words of Brahma, had spoken to her, and therefore she began to question Kapila-Dev. Do you remember what Lord Brahma told Devahuti that inspired her to inquire from her son?
I don't remember now.
Anyone else? It's rather basic in one way. He explained that the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, will take birth from your womb. So naturally understanding that, she can take shelter of him and inquire. Okay.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah,
Right.
sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no problem.
I was going to ask
Yeah.
Ian to continue reading the next one, but this is a really
Okay.
important. Before we go back for one, this is a really important point. To take shelter of that person, because we see that in this day and age, there's not a lot of sons who are self-realized, or even in this country, who want to take care of their parents. And of course, the greatest care is to give Krishna consciousness. So that's another reason why this book distribution is so vital, because this knowledge actually will give everyone faith and hope and the goal of life. If somebody knows the goal of life, actually, he's being taken care of. He or she is being taken care of.
You were talking about wanting to cover the theme of guru disciple. Was that this section, or is that coming up later?
No, I think Echo, but no, Kate asked about that. didn't she, about wanting to discuss
in the forum,
that?
but was this is where you wanted to discuss it, or were you waiting for something
Okay,
different?
we can
I don't
discuss it anywhere. I forgot. Anyway, let's bring it up right now. That because she's taking shelter of her son as the spiritual master. So this is a very important point in Krishna consciousness. Who are you going to hear from? And so before accepting a guru, you see, we're all very influenced by anything that we hear. And of course, the biggest tool of Maya nowadays is the internet, because we're hearing so many different things about everything, right? So it's very important that we find that person who we can give our heart to, who we have complete trust in. And of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the different qualifications of a guru. Another way to find a perfect guru is who is following that person. Kate, did you have a specific question about that you were wanting to address? Because this is really one of the foundations of Krishna consciousness, is the relationship between the disciple and the guru, and how to maintain that relationship.
I think I can only vaguely remember writing that in a forum a few weeks back, I feel like. But it was probably just something to do with how do we know? How do we, what is the vetting system for this relationship? How do we know we can put all of our trust in them?
Well,
I think
I think just to
on,
to add what she had written, I think, Kate, that you mentioned in your forum post that there's so much negativity also about different people that are gurus, or topics of abuse and things like that are floating around now. So you were wondering, how do you filter through that? Is that your kind of question?
yeah, yes.
Boy, that's a great question. It really is. And is actually a very essential question, to find that person who's worthy to hear from, And of course, Krishna has a lot to do with it. He puts us in contact because of devotional service that we've done in the past, and some kind of inquiry. He puts us in contact with things that will help our Krishna consciousness to grow. But it's very important to hear from someone fully before you give your heart to that person, to select a guru. Go on, Patti. You have to unmute, Patti.
One of the things we're trying to present in this online study of Srimad Bhagavatam is pretty much a axiomatic concept that's accepted throughout the Vaishnav community that associates with Srila Prabhupada's followers of all kinds, is that Srila Prabhupada is the primary instructing guru. It's called a Shiksha Guru for everyone. Everyone, more or less, just like in law, there are law books, or in school, there are textbooks written by people who are considered authorities in their field. Srila Prabhupada's teachings, his lectures, his books, his letters of instruction for management, since it was so successful and obvious that he was an empowered preacher of Lord Chaitanya's movement, everybody in any Gaudiya sect accepts that power. They may not accept him as their guru, but they appreciate his presentation of Siddhanta and his commentaries on all these topics. It's one of the reasons we're coming up again. I'll bring it into our topic because it's really a rare opportunity. Coming up at the end of December in the lesson 8 and in all of January, we've put together Prabhupada's lectures on Lord Kapila Dev's instructions to Devahuti. And for each lesson, we'll only study one verse. I'll put up the verse in the purport, online the way we always do. But then there's another page with Prabhupada's lecture on that verse, and it's a transcript will also be on the page, so you can read it as it's going along. So just like the devotees who were in Bombay in 1974, when Srila Prabhupada gave these lectures, they sat and listened to him every day give lectures on these teachings. So similarly, we're putting together a program so we can hear directly from Srila Prabhupada. And when you hear how he presents a lecture day after day, verse after verse, how knowledgeable he is in Vedic Shastra, what the teachings are and how he presents them, I think that everyone will far more appreciate taking shelter of his books, his instructions. It's available to everyone in this Kali Yuga due to this technology. And then other gurus, they're called mantra gurus. They give diksha for mantras so that we can worship the deity and do other such activities. But that's, there's a lot to that, but I hope that encourages everyone. And when we do it, you'll actually experience it. I know you will. When you hear from Prabhupada directly this deeply, we're doing a deep dive into those lectures and into these teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. And you might note that the title of the chapter is The Glories of Devotional Service. Krishna says at the end of at the end of 6th chapter, Yogi nama bisarveshan madgetan enteratmanam shradhavam bhajate yomam same yuktata momataha, that the topmost yoga system is to love Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada can give us that direction how to do that. We're simply following it.
And everyone in this movement who is initiating disciples, their guru is Srila Prabhupada. So in order to actually follow the initiating guru, one must take shelter of Srila Prabhupada. And that's why we've been presenting these courses for so many years. It's very essential. Shyam, did you want to say something?
Yes, I did.
Looks like you got some new devotees with you today.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were attracted to the Bhagavatam today. This is Krishna Charan and Gauradas in the background.
Krishna Charan and Gauradas. Haribol.
Haribol. Haribol. Haribol.
Oh, good boy.
I just wanted to confirm Mother Chaitamayi's thoughts. I just looked back and Maharishi Parasara was Maitreya's spiritual master.
Oh, so. Thank you. Parasara Muni.
Yeah, Canto 3, text, chapter 4, text 9.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. As we all know, Parasara Muni is also a very good friend of Narada Muni, who is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva.
Good. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Tom. That was really helpful.
How about Kate? Would you like to read, Kate? Oh, wait a second. I was going to have Ian read this and then Kate after him. Ian,
okay.
Why don't you go?
Okay. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here the word asat, indriya, tashanat, is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asat, indriya, tashanat, that means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body, and therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses being contaminated by matter are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Wow. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing instruction of Lord Kapila.
Wow. Read that last one again. Unless one becomes tired. Read
Okay.
that.
So unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing instructions of Lord Kapila.
So what does that mean?
It's there. So unless so we I think we try satisfying our senses as long as we feel that okay, but at some point in time we get we get tired because we realize that there's no there's no satisfaction. It's temporary, so it comes and goes, it wanes. So unless we get tired, then we won't want to go into transcendental activities.
Good.
That's my understanding.
Good.
So one has to be tired. One has to yeah.
Materially exhausted.
Yeah, exhausted. That's that's the term.
What is that? How is that in Sanskrit? Kinchana gochara.
Yeah.
Materially, like I'm done, And we're very talented and creative, conditioned souls. We will try every means possible to squeeze out a little juice from this chewed up sugar cane. I'm good. I have faith. I have hope. It's gonna. Prophet says, if you have a material body, that means it's miserable. So if we really take shelter of the words of the spiritual master, all we have to do is follow them. Yes, Tisha.
Hare Krishna. I just want to recognize what has fascinated me all my life is how in the 60s, when the young devotees were searching, like it was a group crowd that was basically tired of the, whatever you guys all thought you were tired of, that sent you on a search, and how the perfect timing that during your wanting to find something else, that Prabhupada came, and other yogis came too. It was just this beautiful time for America to bring this to people like me, and for the future. So Hare Krishna to all of you. Thank you.
Krishna. You know why? Because Prabhupada said the magic words, with this you will stay high forever. That's what we all wanted. We really wanted to be the ultimate high consciousness. Thank you.
One more point. In this purport, it's describing that actually the soul has senses. The eternal body has senses. And what happens is that the impulses of the senses work through the material energy and create an illusion, a shadow-like experience of sense experience. It's sense gratification. So just wanted to point that out, that it's not that's why we get tired, because it's never going to fulfill us. What does it say here? The permanent senses, being uncontaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service therefore involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. So the idea is not to turn off the senses. That's not going to happen. Those impulses will continue to push. The idea is to transform them to Krishna conscious activities, and for the pleasure of Krishna. It changes everything.
Wow. See, this is also a reason why it's very important to associate with each other and to have these kinds of discussions. They're enlivening. They give us hope and faith to the real things. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Patti and Ian. Okay, we have Kate reading the next one, and after Kate, Faye. Okay. Kate, would you like to read this?
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-8. Your lordship is my only means of getting out of the darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental I, which by your mercy only I have attained after many, many births. Here, the word asad indriya tarshana is significant. Asad means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asad indriya tarshana means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body, we are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence.
Oops, my fault, Kate. That's the same verse we just read. I'm sorry. I got another one. Sorry, my fault.
Here I am reading. Nobody.
That's good. We can't hear it too much. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 3:25, 9-10. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and the Supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of ignorance from the universe. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relations. Purport. As the sun dissipates the darkness of the universe, so when the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down, it at once dissipates the darkness of Maya. We have our eyes, but without the light of the sun, our eyes are of no value. Similarly, without the light of the Supreme Lord, or without the divine grace of the spiritual master, one cannot see things as they are. Devahuti has stated that false identification of the body with the self and detachment for possessions in relation to the body are also under the direction of the Lord. Does this mean that the Lord discriminates by engaging one in his devotional service and another in sense gratification? If that were true, it would be an incongruity on part of the Supreme Lord, but that is not the actual fact. As soon as the living entity forgets his real constitutional position of eternal servitorship to the Lord and wants instead to enjoy himself by sense gratification, he is captured by Maya. This capture by Maya is the consciousness of false identification with the body and attachment for the possessions of the body.
Okay, just let's discuss this real quick. Devahuti has stated that false identification of the body with the self and attachment for possessions in relation to the body are also under the direction of the Lord. This is a really interesting point. Not what I was going to talk about, but what do you think about that, Kate? Attachment possessions in relation to the body are made by Krishna. Why does that happen? He's fulfilling the desires of all living entities.
Yeah.
Okay, so go on.
I mean, this is where the free will part comes in, I think, right? This is our
very good.
Without that, I mean, it's like in the forum question, like without free will, there's no choice. We don't have the choice to turn towards God or turn towards false identification with the senses and the objects of the senses and our attachment to our possessions.
And what else is based on free will? Something real important. It's divine. It's divine. Tisha,
I mean, love God.
It's love. Love is based on free will. Because you can't force someone to love you. Love is based on free will. Right? So that's what we want to achieve, that. But also we have the choice, and we see all through this section that the choice is always there, but Prabhupada is very vehemently stating, and so is Lord Kapila Dev, this whole section of the Bhagavatam, give up the material attachment. give up the material attachment, because that's not going to make us happy. Do your duty in a detached manner. This is really important. We have the human form of life. We have to fulfill the goal of life, in everything that we do. And we have so many things that we're attached to in this world. So we have to loosen those ropes by becoming more attached to Krishna and seeing Krishna in everything. And how is Krishna teaching us to become more detached and more attached to the eternal senses? Madhuri Leela? Madhuri, you have your hand up, sweetie. Madhuri?
Sorry, it was hard to unmute. So on the other side is that I think Krishna also arranges that living entity gets attached, for example, a mother to the child, so that they can take care of their duties. Yeah, because if that attachment wasn't there, then we wouldn't be able to do that, really.
Of course, but even that attachment, we have to use the spiritual senses, because if we don't, then we get stuck in the attachment and we forget about Krishna.
Isn't Devahuti asking her son, you are the Supreme Lord. It's okay to ask for help. She's asking for instructions. How this is all happening due to your energy. You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
That is true. All right. Well, maybe the next part of the purport will shed some more light. Kate, thank you, sweetie. Now, Faye, why don't you read the next part of the purport?
Purport continued. The Lord is merciful. If anyone wants to forget him and enjoy the material world, he gives him full facility, not directly, but through the agency of his material potency. Therefore, since the material potency is the Lord's energy, indirectly, it is the Lord who gives facility to forget him. Devahuti therefore said, my engagement in sense gratification was also due to you. Now kindly get me free from this entanglement. Sinful activities are those activities performed in the forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. In this material world, activities for material enjoyment, which are considered to be pious, are also sinful. For example, one sometimes gives something in charity to a needy person with the view to getting back the money 4 times increased. Giving with the purpose of gaining something is called charity in the mode of passion. Everything done here is done in the modes of material nature, and therefore all activities but service to the Lord are sinful. Because of sinful activities, we have become attracted to the illusion of material attachment. And we think, I am this body. I think of the body as myself and bodily possessions as mine. Devahuti requested Lord Kapila to free her from that entanglement of false identification and false possession.
Unmute, Sama.
Thank you, Faith. I want you to describe this. This is such a powerful purport. Why don't you tell me what you describe it a little bit further? What does this actually mean?
If we think of the 3 modes of nature, ignorance, passion, and goodness, if we think of those modes as ropes, or snares. It's so easily done to be entangled hopelessly. Devahuti is an exemplary devotee. She executed her duties as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter. She was in Krishna consciousness, but yet she still was existing in a world of the material, just as we are. She has the chutzpah to come right out and say, I need help. Get me out of these ropes of entanglement caused by my forgetting who I really am and what I really am and what I really should be doing. And that is loving you, serving you. I've identified with this silly body. And Lord Brahma told me that you would be coming and that you would be teaching me these things. So she's seizing the moment. She's saying, help me. I think with false ego that we have, it is so extraordinarily easy to say, I don't need any help. I got this. But in fact, without Krishna's merciful help, we can't get away from these material modes. And lastly, I thought it was neat in the purports that we just read, and that my classmate read before me, that Krishna's had a hand in this, in that he is the master of the internal potencies. He is the master of Maya. He is the master of everything. And here we are misusing our free will not to love him fully, not to engage in his service, because we get distracted by all these other needless, silly things.
Good. That's perfect. So this is interesting because as you were speaking, I was seeing that the we were talking about the guru and how one must inquire submissively. And what does that mean, to inquire submissively? What does that mean?
In all humility, we have to have become tired enough to understand that we need the helpful assistance of the guru, and the authoritative guru has that torchlight of knowledge, that bright light that can dispel Maya's illusions and dissipate our own delusions, so that we know what is what finally and who to ask. Get me out of here.
Doesn't it also mean acting or accepting? And just like Arjuna, he was confused. He didn't know what to do. Finally, he got to the point where he said, please instruct me. And Prabhupada points out that the friendly talks ended. This means that he accepted him. Is that where you were going, Sama?
Yeah, exactly. That when we talk about surrendering, hearing submissively, inquiring, there's another side to it. You have to follow the instruction. Hearing means acting. You don't just hear and it goes out the other ear. If you're hearing from the self-realized soul, actually, after millions of births, you're finally able to hear from someone who actually knows the truth. You have to follow what he says. Even if I'm so attached to this. Sorry, at the end of your life, you're going to forget about all this. And after a while, everybody will forget about you too. So we have to deal with the eternal. Who had their hand up? Chaita, did he, my husband brought up the same point you were going to say?
Oh, that was exactly, Dhruva already mentioned the verse. It was 2:7. I was just going to mention that. It's the same mood. I have no place else to go. I am your disciple and I'm surrendered unto you. So thank you. thank you for mentioning that. I just wanted to thank Faye for her brilliant conception of the purport. Really well done, Faye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think,
All
okay.
I don't know, Maduria, your hand is still up. Do you have something else to say?
No, she took it down, I think.
Oh, she took it down. All right, well, that was beautiful and very intense and wonderful. And now we have to just follow what Prabhupada tells us to do. See, that's anybody who's in this movement, as was spoken before, is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada in one sense. He is the Shiksha Guru. Your guru is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. So it's your duty to understand the source of this knowledge and follow it in the best way that we can.
And thankfully, with this Parampara system, designed and generated and controlled by Krishna, we can now, starting tomorrow when I post the lessons, is where we'll actually hear. We've up till now, we've been hearing the buildup and all the different questions and all the circumstances surrounding Lord Kapiladev's advent. Now Devahuti has asked her questions. She said, I'm sick and tired. I'm tired of this. Please give me enlightenment. So now from now on, we'll hear directly from Lord Kapiladev. So looking forward to that with all of your association. With that, I think we'll end here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Have a good day, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You want a group Hare Krishna? Okay, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to Prabhupada. Hare